We do have a few people in overflow who were not voting members that we let go over to Kilburn just to listen, but they are not voting. They won't have a voice. We had a laptop linked to them, and I've closed my computer. So this forum of people that are assembled in this room are the voters for this election, and it also includes those people, of course, who voted by mail for our election, for our director's slate. But we have spent an incredible amount of time preparing for this annual meeting. And in particular, we've been working hand in glove with the Eastman School of Music, who is the owner of this lovely hall. And I would really like to thank Michelle Gibson and Keith Elder for their support. I think at least one of them is here somewhere, and Jamal Rossi. Thank you for your support. Making this work on very, very short notice. And several of you have suggested, well, let's just move the meeting back to Kilburn Hall, which is where we've held it in previous years. But we did not move the meeting to Kilburn, and the answer is that our plans for this meeting have been in flight since before the holidays. And that includes mailing the notice of the meeting to 2,900 eligible voters in time for them to vote. So we needed to get started on that very early on, and we had booked this hall. And our bylaws require that we make that mailing within 10 to 50 days of the annual meeting. And when increased interest in the meeting became apparent in the new year, our mailing was already underway. It had gone out to people. We'd notified them. So we decided, in fairness to everybody, not to change the location and to proceed with arrangements for overflow if we needed it. Thankfully, we don't. We've been able to squeeze just about everybody, actually not just about, everybody who showed up and would like to have a voice into this hall. So I'm very pleased about that. But I also apologize for the delay in getting started. I think you understand now why we asked you to mail your ballots in advance instead of bringing them to the meeting. While that's certainly allowed, it does slow down the process, and we've had Bonadino and company and a team of four people working to verify both ballots and proxies, and they are the election inspector. So, I'm really glad everybody showed out. I'm really glad we have increased interest in the orchestra this year. Typically when we've held these meetings, we're lucky to get 75 people to turn out. So I'm really pleased that you're all here, and I hope I will see many of you at our concerts this weekend. Here's our agenda for today. I've already called the meeting to order. Jules Smith will read the minutes from last year's meeting, and we will ask for your approval via a voice vote. I will also present a brief summary of the key actions of the board during the most recent fiscal year, and this requirement is consistent with our bylaws. Then the financial report will be presented by Steve Hess, the treasurer and chair of the finance committee, and the members will elect their directors and approve the bylaws changes. Craig Stevens, who's a partner and the election inspector at Bonadillo, will give us the results of the voting. And at that point, we will then adjourn the business portion of our meeting. We will then hear from Charlie Owens, President and CEO, and he will take us through some highlights of this last fiscal year. And then I will come back up to answer any questions that you may have. And again, some logistics around answering questions. We will take questions in written format only. There is paper in the room or outside the room that you can use to write your questions on. And the ushers who are stationed in the room can pick up your questions when we get to this portion of the meeting. And we'll bring them up here and consolidate them and try to answer as many questions as we can. And one final note, I know there are many different points of view in the meeting today, and I ask that all of us conduct ourselves with decorum and respect. We all have the best interest of the orchestra at heart, regardless of what our opinion is. So I asked you to conduct yourself in a professional and a respectful manner for all of the other people who are in the room. And any person who does persist in being disruptive or disrespectful will be asked to leave. So Jules will now read the minutes from last year's meeting.
Point of order. Will there be a time for people to read statements?
We'll have time at the end of the question and answer period for people to ask questions or make statements.
When I was preparing to read these minutes, I thought I'd check to see what the weather was like last year when we had a meeting. It was 48 degrees and sunny. Well, at least it was sunny today. Let me read the minutes now. The annual meeting minutes for Tuesday, January 24th, 2012, 4:30 p.m., Hatch Hall, Easton School of Music. Call to order in Charlie's remarks. Betsy Rice called the meeting to order. She reviewed the meeting agenda. Inspection of election report. Craig Stevens, partner of Bonadier Group and designated as election inspector, affirmed that a quorum was reached and that all candidates for new board terms have been duly elected. Ms. Rice introduced returning board members David Ackroyd, Dr. John Bennett, William Cherry, Susan DeMarco, William Eggers, Eileen Flom, Lamar Jackson, Dr. Gwen Stearns, Deborah Wilson, and herself, and new board members Megan Henry, Ross Lanzafane, and Robert Stiles. She welcomed Charlie Owens, President and CEO, to the podium. The President's Report, Part 1. Charlie Owens thanked Betsy Rice and acknowledged the board leadership of immediate past board chair Suzanne Welch during the 2010-11 season, September 1st, 2010 through the fiscal year end of August 31st, 2011. He reviewed the 2010-11 priorities. Successes for the year included a balanced budget, producing a small surplus, the launch of the, quote, Celebrate Christopher, close quote, campaign in honor of conductor laureate and former music director Christopher Seaman, and the engagement of Ariel Remerite as the new music director. Mr. Owens announced that the RPO had been invited to return to Carnegie Hall in 2014. He discussed the highlights of the past season. Subscription ticket sales topped $2 million, which set the record for the highest ever gross sales. He announced that Principal Pops conductor Jeff Tyzik has signed a 5-year contract through 2015-16. He talked about the release of the CD, quote, A Family for Baby Grand, close quote, conducted by Michael Butterman. He thanked RPO patrons for providing support to make these many accomplishments possible. Financial review. Stephen Hess, Treasurer and Chair of the Finance Committee, gave the financial report. He discussed financial highlights and provided a summary of the financial results. The RPO posted a surplus of $20,371 on a total budget of $9.3 million. This year marks the second consecutive year with a balanced budget. Mr. Hess observed that this would not be possible without the shared sacrifice of the musicians, conductors, and staff, as well as the support from the community. He reported that the RPO is current on its term loan, although a substantial balance remains. He referenced reductions to wages, retirement, and health care, and said that the RPO's objective in the 2011-12 fiscal year is to restore compensation. This will require us to raise an additional $475,000 over our current budget. Music director's remarks. Maestro Rummerite discussed the RPO's appearance at Carnegie Hall, slated for May 2014, and the program intended to be performed. Musicians report. Mr. Baer expressed concern over the ongoing fiscal challenges and observed that we are doing well in comparison with other orchestras. President's Report, Part 2. Mr. Owens stated that the RPO has made progress on all of its goals for the past year. A balanced budget, celebrating the end of outgoing music director Christopher Seaman's tenure, preparing for a real Remerites arrival, increasing community engagement, and completing a new strategic plan. He discussed the RPO strategic plan, which has been voted into effect by the RPO Board of Directors. The Strategic Planning Committee, chaired by Patrick Fulford, was comprised of 4 subcommittees whose representation included a cross-section of the board, staff, conductors, and musicians, approximately 50 people in all. Concluding remarks. Betsy Rice stated that the future holds excitement, but cautioned that the orchestra continues to face challenges. She reaffirmed a positive outlook for the RPO and said that she is grateful to the community for its support. The meeting was then adjourned at 5:40 p.m. Do I hear any requests for amendments or additions to the minutes? If not, without objection, we'll declare the minutes approved as read. Thank you.
The last fiscal year. And first, let's start with key additions to our honorary board. Honorary board members are proposed for membership by the Governance Committee in collaboration with the honorary board. They are then confirmed by the RPO Board of Directors. Honorary board members are people who have established a record of unusual or outstanding service or contribution to the RPO, and whose leadership in cultural life and high qualities of character and personal reputation bring honor to the RPO. So we are very pleased to add and announce officially at our honorary board Harry and Nancy Balfus. I'm not sure if they are here today. Jim Boucher as an honorary board member, and I know I saw Louis and Alice Amanda. If you could stand up, Louis and Alice, wherever you are. And I'd also like to acknowledge Keith Wilson, who I also saw. I'm not sure where he is sitting. He's way in the back there. I'd like to acknowledge Keith for his 9 years of service to the RPO Board of Directors. He has served three-year terms, and that's our limit for unbroken service to the board, so he is, as we call it, terming out at the end of this meeting. But I'd also like to thank Keith for his contributions over the last 3 years. We are extremely grateful for the support of our board. In addition to providing countless hours of volunteer support, they're also a foundation for financial support to the RPO. Collectively, I'm pleased to report to you that our board of directors and its affiliates, which include personal donations, corporate sponsorships, family foundations, that combination provided $840,000 of financial support to the RPO last year. That's an average contribution, excluding our ex officio members, of $27,000 per board member, or if you take out the top 5 contributors, which sometimes can skew things, it's an average of $12,700. Our honorary board members also contributed an additional $240,000 in fiscal 2011-2012. I am so grateful for everybody's support. It gives us such a firm foundation to stand upon. And would all board members and honorary board members who are here today please rise for some acknowledgement. Other actions of the board. In September of 2012, the board passed an operating budget of $9.9 million. It increased its revenue budget by $600,000 from the prior year. Why did we do this? We had just approved a strategic plan that identified many growth opportunities for the RPO. We were buoyed by record-setting ticket sales from the prior year, and we had balanced our budget for the last 2 years. We had an exciting new music director to fuel interest in concerts and donations, and we thought the time was right to reinvest in musician and staff compensation after 2 years of cuts. And we also made some investments in the programming of our new music director's inaugural season. However, our ticket sales declined and our annual campaign remained flat. result, we were left with a deficit this fiscal year of $746,000 in our unrestricted accounts. However, when we include revenue from all sources, and all sources of revenue are our operating accounts, our temporary restricted accounts, which go for future programming, as well as our permanently restricted endowment funds, we actually had a surplus of $126,000. Steve Hess will give you more details in a minute when he gets up to do the President's report. Other actions of the board. The Executive Committee met in January of 2012 to discuss the issues related to the working relationship between the music director and the CEO. A subset of the committee met jointly with Mr. Remright and Mr. Owens in early February to stress the importance of working collaboratively together. The situation did not improve, and the full board was informed in March, and in April, the board hired a third party to analyze the situation and to make recommendations. The report was shared with the full board in May of 2012. In June of 2012, the board passed a resolution that appreciated the unique contributions of both Mr. Remright, the music director, and Mr. Owens, the CEO. The resolution asked both men to build a collaborative working relationship to support the objectives of the RPO, to demonstrate respect for all board, honorary board members, all staff, and all musicians, and to agree to respect and work within the governance structures of the RPO, the board committees, the administrative organization, the musicians' contract, and the musicians' union processes around tenure, auditions, and personnel moves. Both men agreed in June, and the resolution held both the music director and the CEO accountable for progress. It stated that the board would monitor the situation and take appropriate action if sufficient progress were not being made. A formal assessment was carried out during late October and early November. Board members had the opportunity to review all assessments for both individuals. The assessment results led to the termination of Mr. Remright's contract effective August 31st, 2013. Now, I know many of you are probably wondering about the current state of affairs between the RPO and Mr. Remright. And as you know, the board did offer Mr. Remright the chance to continue to perform this season, but he has not provided us any assurances that he will do so. Many people say they want him reinstated. However, the truth is, he has shown no interest in being reinstated, nor has he shown any interest in finishing this season. In fact, before we notified him that we were terminating his contract early, he came to the RPO offices and completely cleared out his office, and he has not set foot in the RPO offices since. People say they have been energized by his programming, and we have been working with Mr. Remright since this past summer to develop our programming for the 2013-14 season. We needed that programming by October 31st in order to make sure we could book guest conductors, guest artists, do the marketing, do the pricing, and get our season out, which will be coming out in a few weeks. We later extended that deadline for him to Thanksgiving of 2012. And as he left the offices, he had failed to provide our programming for next season. He has failed to attend auditions for November and December 2012. He has failed to attend 3 meetings for first tenure for several orchestra members, and he has not responded to others. He has failed to communicate by mail, telephone, or email with the RPO staff. We have point blank asked him whether he will perform the balance of this season, and he has refused to answer. In short, he has been totally non-responsive to our repeated requests and has done none of the things he is obligated to do as music director, since we notified him of his early termination. So therefore, we were left with no other choice but to hire a guest conductor and replace him this week. We are very fortunate to have Maestro Yoav Talmi joining our guest soloist Mark Kellogg, who I know is here as well. I think he's upstairs, for the Phil's concert this weekend, and Maestro Andrew Constantine for our Sunday matinee family concert that will cover 3 generations of Mozart music. That's the end of my report on actions of the board. I will now turn it over to Steve Hess, the treasurer of the board of directors, for his finance report.
Betsy, and welcome. Betsy's already given you the bottom line, so let me get right into it. Let me first review just a little bit the previous 2 years, and keep in mind we're on a fiscal year that ends August 31st. We're actually nearly half through this fiscal year already. It goes so fast. So we're not talking about last year, we're talking about the fiscal year that ended August 31st. In the previous 2 years, in response to the recession and declining revenues and, of course, expenses, only through the concessions of our brilliant and talented musicians, our conductors, our staff, there was a total of approximately $500,000 in concessions each year. That's a total of $1 million that our fine staff and performers and conductors gave up in order to be able to eke out a small surplus of the previous two years. However, all of us knew that this was not sustainable. You can't cut your way to profitability, it never works. But at the time, it was the best we could do. However, we were morally committed and contractually committed to restore those cuts this previous fiscal year, the year that we are reviewing. In truth, we did not know where the money is going to come from, but we were inspired by virtue of a new music director and what we call the real buzz, the excitement, and we basically crossed our fingers. All the signs were there that we would increase ticket sales and other revenue sources. So we basically allowed our positive state of mind, our good wishes and our hope to say we will be able to do that. The reality was it did not happen. Revenue fell flat. Actually, flat was not the worst thing given all the other economic things, the disappearance of Kodak and their retirees. So in a broader sense, a flat revenue was not the worst thing, but we needed to actually increase that substantially. Our hope that ticket sales would increase simply wasn't realized. Ticket sales declined. Let me first go over the operating funds. We call them unrestricted operating funds. It's basically our operational funds. It's analogous to the home budget. It's the paycheck. It is not the 401k. It is not the kids' college fund. It is the money you have to run the household, which we call unrestricted funds. For the fiscal year, I'm not going to go through all the figures because they're there and you can see them. But basically, the changes from the previous year to last year, the revenue, and by the parentheses are bad and no parentheses are good. On the revenue side, we were down $145,000 year to year. The expense side increased by $622,000, which led to the deficit that you see there of $746,000. Because we eked out a small surplus the year before, that's added, so the total change is actually $767,000. Some of the major issues that influenced this was that the ticket sales were down 3%. We had hoped for a substantial increase. It didn't happen. They were down 3%. Special events, fundraising in the inaugurals, special galas, all that. The difference, the change over the year was a deficit or reduction of $73,000. The annual campaign, when compared to the line below for underwriting, one is down 19, one is up 19, results in a flat year for underwriting. All the other issues, government grants and other income items changed to the positive by $24,000, giving us again the total of the revenue decline year over year of $145,000 or minus 3%. On the expense side, the major, you can see it here, the major issue was the $583,000 in wages, benefits for the orchestra conductors and the office staff. An orchestra is a highly labor-intensive operation. We have world-class players, superb players. They are, as we all agree, they are not paid. They make all sorts of concessions. They do not go into this business to make money. They do it for the love of music, and they do it so wonderfully. Nevertheless, the symphony orchestra runs on money, and there wasn't enough of it. So the labor costs fell short by $583,000. The guest artist costs also increased by $88,000, but that was driven mostly by Yitzhak Perlman, who does not work for minimum wages. But that said, he brought in quite a bit. It was for the RPO, it was a profitable performance, but it increased the cost for guest conductors. All the other expenses, which is all the other overhead, from the copier to the coffee machine to the everything, the rent, the utilities, all those things actually improved by very careful management, and the overhead expenses were actually reduced by $49,000, also having to do with not filling staff openings, and a lot of people taking on 2 jobs. So the net deficit really all had to do with labor costs. And keep in mind that for all those of you who are business owners or managers, the RPO does not get a break from RG&E because we're wonderful, or from Blue Excellus. All those prices went up. The cost of music went up, rentals went up. Nevertheless, the overhead, the non-compensation costs were still reduced by $49,000. Ron, if you want to go ahead. This is just an overview of the trend over the past years since 2004. Someone said to me, Jeff Tyson said to me, he said, we're a $10 million orchestra in an $8 million town. And that was a real good insight. We have a world-class orchestra, and it's tough paying for that. But as you can see, up through 2007, our revenue and our expenses sort of kept pace, and things were okay. And suddenly the recession hit, and of course it hit the RPO as hard as anyone, and expenses were trimmed as much as possible. You see the flat line on top there, but revenue declined much more rapidly. And at that point, the staff, musicians, conductors, essentially all agreed, chipped in for very substantial concessions, with the result that over the 2 years following, we were able to pretty much eke out a very small surplus. I rather look at it as a balanced budget. The surplus was small, but we managed it. As Betty alluded to, the unrestricted funds, that's the household budget. It doesn't include everything. We also get revenue from other sources, and these, as Betsy alluded to, fall into temporary and permanently restricted funds. The temporary funds is what typically a donor will give. For example, for the Carnegie, we're right now raising money for Carnegie Hall in 2014, so donors will hopefully give us money, and that money cannot be spent now. It is therefore temporarily restricted. On the other hand, some donors will say this money is for a particular purpose. It can't be spent for anything else, but we are able to spend the income of hopefully the income from those funds, which go into a temporary bucket, and when the event happens or when the board votes on it, the temporary funds go into operating funds. So our last year was, well, disappointing to say the least. We did get an increase of $420,000 net in temporary restricted funds. That money is available for future programs and future activities, and $452,000 in permanently restricted funds. Those funds are restricted in perpetuity, but the interest, of course, is available for future operations. So to the good, when all is said and done, when we look at the household budget and we look at the income from the kids' college fund and all those things, we had an extra $126,000. Ron? And quickly touch on the endowments. We have two endowments. One endowment is controlled directly by RPO, by the board, and then there is an additional endowment managed through RPO Fund Inc. For the purposes of the RPO, it is managed at arm's length. But together, the endowments increased $264,000 over the year. Those increases, the stock market was pretty positive last year, and we benefit from that. In addition, we had the temporary and permanent additions to the fund. So the year-over-year change was an increase of $264,000. Finally, looking forward, your board has been incredibly active in trying to save every dime that we could. And again, we just finished contract talks between our musicians, and they once again, in a tremendous feeling of common purpose and goodwill, agreed to concessions, and with the result is that in the first year we have a 4-year contract. Altogether, we have a $786,000 or 8% in cost reductions. It's not enough, but it is a huge amount of money, and it will go a long way. That includes $328,000 in first-year orchestra wage and benefit concessions for the first year, having also to do with a shortened season of 36 weeks. This season will increase over the subsequent years, and that includes paid vacation. In addition, the staff, as always, has risen to the occasion, and there are an extra $185,000 in staff savings. Some jobs have been combined, a couple of jobs have not been filled, but again, belt tightening was in evidence all over the place. We have a $212,000 in the budget reduction in production-related expense. Some of the stuff has to do with, for example, big pieces are just simply more expensive. So with some creative programming, we've been able to, well, we will save some money in production expense using a small ensemble, here and there, at times even shorter pieces. But again, we looked in every direction to try and save money without in any way impinging on the quality of this wonderful, wonderful orchestra. And we reduced our advertising expense $61,000. In any business, when things are tight, you cut the advertising, you hate to do it, but we did cut $61,000. On a very positive note, we now have a fully staffed development team and a marketing team, and as a result of them shaking the trees and shaking them hard, on a year-to-year basis, we are over $200,000 ahead year-to-year of our fundraising activities. So I'm sorry to report all the depressing news, but we are hopeful that we're going to go on to a very bright future. Thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to invite up to the podium Craig Stevens. He will give us the results of the board member election and proposed bylaws change.
Madam Chair.
Yes, the chair recognizes Tom King.
My name is Tom Fink. I've been a member of this organization for 30 plus years. I appreciate Joel Smith permitting me to indicate that on behalf of those who have fundamental objections to the way this board has been functioning, and specifically the actions in terminating our amazing conductor, concerns about the way this meeting has been run. When we found the decision of the board that you had terminated our conductor, we wrote to you, understanding that the bylaws forbid a slate to be presented if it had not been presented by October 31st, of 2012.
That's correct.
The announcement that the conductor is terminated occurred after that.
That's
Whether
correct.
that was intentional or unintentional, the problem is that the will of the membership, this is a democratic organization set up by George Eastman, to not just be a board-selected board, but an organization that was democratic, and that the members of the board, members of the organization had a right, if there was an opposition to the position of those who are incumbents, to have a slate presented. And so we wrote to you and said, take an action that will suspend the board bylaws that forbid a new slate to be presented, so that 2 slates would go out to all of the membership with the credentials of all of the nominees, so that the entire membership would be able, with intelligence, to take a vote. And it could go whichever way, supporting the current board and the decision, or supporting those who support the conductor. And all we received was silence. We then asked for at least to get the membership list, so we could communicate to the members. We got half a list, non-alphabetized, with no addresses. Thank you very much. So we're here
Excuse me,
today.
Mr. Fink, are you going to make a motion or are you just going to talk?
My understanding that I had with Jewel Smith that I would be able to make a presentation.
I thought you were going to make a motion.
You want to cut me off, you can cut me off. You've cut us off in expressing ourselves. This is a
All right, if you could finish in a timely fashion, I'll then respond to what you said. And then I will invite Craig Stevens up to finish our agenda. Okay?
Want to make sure
In a timely
it's
fashion.
reflected in the minutes that we object to the manner in which this meeting is being conducted. You openly slander our conductor. And we heard from him in an open meeting, which had an overflow crowd, who heard his vision and his desire to lead this orchestra. We've seen him at meetings all over this community, raising the level of the orchestra that we all love. And that is one thing we're all united on. We love the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, and that is one thing that unites us. But we believe that the manner in which the board has functioned is undemocratic, and you've taken away our vote. And this process that you've conducted is not in conjunction with the law of New York State and the intent of the bylaws.
I could respond to your allegations. First, we cannot suspend the bylaws. There is no law that allows us to suspend the bylaws, and the bylaws are there to protect all of our members. Next, we did reply to you and told you exactly that. Third, in terms of provision of the membership list, you got exactly what you were entitled to per our bylaws. And you are not entitled to addresses. We've checked both our bylaws and the nonprofit law. We are running our meeting in a democratic way, and the action of the board stands. Now, I will invite Craig Stevens to the podium to now present the results of the election. The chair does not recognize anybody else at this point in time.
I'm over here, sir, please.
Excuse me, the chair does not recognize anybody other than Mr. Craig Stevens at this point in time. I told somebody that there would be a Q&A and a chance to make statements at the end of the meeting. This is not the end of the meeting.
Madam President, I would like the minutes to reflect that you are cutting me off and voicing my objections to the procedure for this meeting.
Pardon me, you are out of order. Craig.
reported to us, in fact, is not true. May I continue?
No.
I would like to urge everyone to read the city newspaper.
Look, Mr. Pandaya, you were on the board.
Yes,
You were involved in our decisions up to the point that you resigned.
but
It's not my issue that you resigned. You don't know what went on when we terminated Mr. Remright's
you made a
contract.
false statement today in your report that I would like to correct.
No, I don't believe I did.
Okay, then the rest of the membership, you know.
Tell them what it was.
The Treviso report you mentioned was shared with the full board. That was not true until later on. It was implemented without sharing it with the board.
That's
That's
not
a fact.
That's not correct.
No, that is a fact.
That's not
And I
correct.
think Jules
The
Smith will
Carrizo
agree with me.
report was shared with the entire board. The
Not
entire board was not authorized to take a copy of it home, and you took it home
Yes.
without asking permission.
There was no vote taken on that either, by the way. So,
Isn't he out of line?
Yes, he is. Would you sit down, please? Okay, thank you. Craig?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Stevens. I'm a partner with the Bonadeo Group, and as the Inspector of the Elections, I am here to report the election was conducted without bias, that a quorum was reached, and that all nominees were duly appointed to the board, and the proposed amendment to the bylaws was approved.
Thank you, Craig. I would like to have stand, if you dare, our returning board members, Bill Cherry, Patrick Fulford, I know is in Florida, Marie Kenton, Dawn Lipson, Mark Sewick, Ingrid Standless, and our new directors, Kathy Schumacher and Dr. Eugene Toy. Thank you for being here. Is there any other business to come before this board meeting, this meeting of members? The chair recognizes Nanette Malcolm.
I just wanted to find out why certain members of the RPO did not get ballots that they used to get. Is that part of the strategy?
The question was, why did certain members of the RPO not get ballots?
Specifically the most.
The maestro did not get one? He should have. Well, no, he did not tell us that. He could have requested one. He is a member. He is authorized to vote. We got no input from him on whether he should have a ballot or not. We did have the reason. Let me stop here for a minute. The database that we pulled from, the board had determined a record date for voting of January 1st, 2012 through December 21st, 2012. There are any number of members who gave outside of those time boundaries, and so they did not get a ballot to vote in this annual meeting. If Mr. Remright did not get a ballot, I apologize. It was not an omission on our part. We had several people that checked in here who didn't get ballots. We had a process set up in the back room, in the green room. If anybody didn't get a ballot, to verify their membership and give them the opportunity to vote. If no other business, I declare this meeting adjourned. And we will now have a few highlights from Charlie Owens about the year in review. And then when Charlie is done, we will take your questions and answers.
Good evening, everyone. As we've heard earlier this evening, the RPO annual meeting is a time for our bylaws to shine a spotlight on the audited financial results from the prior fiscal year to put those numbers in context. But this meeting is also a time to reflect on the orchestra's artistic progress, to remind ourselves of our commitment to education and community service, to reflect on the progress we've made against our strategic goals, and to express our gratitude to our ticket buyers, subscribers, donors, and sponsors who make the music possible. In spite of the financial challenges that Betsy and Steve discussed a little while ago, the RPO has much to be proud of from a programming and community engagement standpoint in the past year. My goal for the next several minutes is to highlight many of the RPO's non-financial accomplishments of the 2011-2012, with emphasis on two of the strategic priorities of the multi-year strategic plan adopted by our board in July 2011. You can see the 7 strategic priorities here. In the interest of time, I'm focusing specifically on the first 2 items, which were where we plan to make significant progress in this past fiscal year. So let's look at the first of these goals, to grow our audience with new programming for existing and new patrons. You heard in the finance report that ticket sales on all series fell short of our expectations in 11-12, and ticket revenues declined about 2% overall. But as all of us experienced week after week as RPO concertgoers, bold, innovative programming was a hallmark of a truly memorable year in music. And I'd like to take a few moments, for the record, to point out many of these highlights. The RPO and Maestro Remorai were honored to receive the orchestra's 3rd ASCAP Award for Adventurous Programming, in the Amy Award for orchestral programming from the Women's Philharmonic Advocacy Organization. Now, the ASCAP Award recognizes orchestras that have demonstrated a programming commitment to new music, including commissioning projects, notable premieres, and a concentration of music written in the past 25 years. The RPO presented 2 world premieres on the classical series in the 11-12 season, including the RPO commissioned Caution Ahead, Guardrail Out by Margaret Brower, and a viola concerto by Ollie Wilson. Another RPO premiere was an extra special event for children and families last spring when actor John Delancey, famous for his role as Q on Star Trek The Next Generation, joined the RPO in the New York premiere of Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches, a new work for narrator and orchestra by the Spanish composer Lorenzo Palomo, commissioned by local doctor Sidney Sobel. In addition to Margaret Brower's premiere, other women composers featured throughout the season included Amy Beach, Peggy Stewart Coolidge, Gabriela Elena Frank, Sofia Gubailina, Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel, Clara Schumann, and Karen Tanaka. Arguably the highest concentration of music by women performed by any American orchestra last season. Capacity audiences packed Kodak Hall on several occasions during the season, including the Saturday night performance of the Mahler Resurrection Symphony in October, Cirque de la Symphonie on the Pops opening weekend, and Itzhak Perlman performing the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto with the RPO in January. Last May, more than 600 violists from across the country and beyond came to Rochester for the 40th Annual International Viola Congress here at the Eastman School of Music. Viola concertos by Sofia Gubailina and Ollie Wilson were featured on the final Philharmonic Series weekend of the season. The final 2 artistic milestones I'd like to mention this evening honor 2 of our distinguished RPO conductors. The RPO's newest commercial recording was released last March by Harmonia Mundi USA. This all Vaughan Williams disc, recorded a year earlier, was conducted by Christopher Seaman, and its release coincided with his 70th birthday and his return to the RPO podium as our conductor laureate. In May, our own Jeff Tyzik was inducted into the inaugural class of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, alongside such notables as jazz artist Chuck Mangione, entertainer Pat Calloway, Broadway composer Charles Strauss, singer Jenny Lind, flutist Dorio Anthony Dwyer, and rock guitarist Gene Cornish. The second initiative I'd like to focus on here is the one that calls for expanding the RPO's reach throughout our region. Now, this strategy is built around 2 concepts that we believe will be key to the future of the RPO: regionalization and deepening the RPO's hometown ties to Rochester's neighborhoods, institutions, and community events. Regionalization we define as our expanded commitment to regularly serving a broad range of communities within a 2-hour radius from Rochester. In 2011-12, the RPO took an important step forward in this effort when we announced a new concert series that began in the current season, and a new partnership with Ithaca College. In addition to Ithaca, the RPO performed an expanded range of concerts throughout the region. As far afield as Canandaigua, Clifton Springs, Geneseo, Geneva, Keuka Park, Livonia, Newark, and the RPO's, I believe, first ever concert in Inlet, New York. Now, RPO Everywhere is how we've labeled our goal of building ever deeper connections between the RPO and our community, and increasing opportunities for the RPO to participate in signature community events. In the first year of our new RPO Everywhere initiative, the RPO was a featured presence throughout the community all season long. Highlights included a truly remarkable array of events: a Fashion Week concert in the U.S. Airport's hangar at Rochester International Airport, an organ and orchestra concert at Sacred Heart Cathedral, a special prelude concert to the annual Nazareth College Dance Festival, partnerships with George Eastman House at its first annual Photo Finish 5K, and with Rochester Contemporary Art Center and their 6x6x 2012 art show, and even RPO booths at the Park Avenue Festival, Cornhill Arts Festival, and Spencerport Canal Days. Beyond this impressive series of important firsts for the RPO, large and enthusiastic audiences greeted the RPO at several free summertime concerts. Our annual patriotic 4th of July concert on the Main Street Bridge, sponsored by the City of Rochester for the past 4 years. And 3 concerts sponsored by Monroe County last year. Our annual concerts at Frontier Field and Ontario Beach, and a special concert in Tarrantine Center Park, which was a cornerstone event during that town's bicentennial. We made or continued other important community connections last season. Here are some examples. In June, which is right here in this room, the RPO partnered with the University of Rochester Medical Center's Wilmot Cancer Center for a weekend-long symposium honoring Dr. John Bennett's 80th year and his longtime contributions to leukemia research and also to the RPO. The long-standing partnership between the RPO and the Eastman School of Music reached new heights in 2011-12 with performances by Eastman students in the Clara Schumann Piano Concerto and selections from De Rosenkavalier, and a performance of a new work by Eastman student composer Gilad Rabinovich in the main series. Advanced Eastman conducting students Jonathan Gerard and Jerry Howe also served in the newly created positions last season of conducting fellows. And with generous support from Deborah Ronen and Sherman Levy, in August the RPO performed in the final concerto round of the biennial Eastman Young Artists International Piano Competition. Among our other important community collaborations last season were our annual Nutcracker performances with Rochester City Ballet on Thanksgiving weekend, the Mahler Resurrection Symphony with the Eastman Rochester Chorus, and one of our community's most beloved traditions, the Gala Holiday Pops Chorus, featuring approximately 200 of the finest high school choristers in our region. Last year, we also were proud to join the Eastman School of Music, Hochstein School of Music and Dance, and the Rochester City School District in the formation of a partnership that launched Rock Music, a new after-school music program for city youth, modeled after the very successful Harmony Project in Los Angeles. The founder and leader of that program, Dr. Margaret Martin, was the featured speaker at the Education Takes the Stage luncheon last March, our second annual joint benefit for the RPO and WXXI Public Broadcasting. So in spite of our underlying financial challenges, whenever our musicians take the stage, the house lights dim, and the music begins, we are all reminded of the vital role the RPO plays in bringing joy, beauty, solace, and spirited entertainment into the lives of thousands of concertgoers in the Rochester region every year. It takes more than a village to make all of this possible. Nearly 5,700 donors contributed to the RPO's annual campaign last year, along with dozens of companies and foundations, and a small but important handful of government agencies. We are all deeply grateful to all of these donors, including all of you here this evening, for supporting this great orchestra so generously, accounting for nearly 45% of our operating revenues. Now, many of these donors, of course, are recognized in our monthly Bravo programs and in our online annual report. But here tonight, I want to express deep appreciation to our series sponsors. The RPO welcomed its newest series sponsors in 2011-12. Dr. Jack and Dawn Lipson sponsored the Philharmonic series last year. Canandaigua National Bank and Trust and Fiber Tech Networks jointly sponsored the Pop series. They join Wendy's, who continue their long-time title sponsorship of our Sunday afternoon family series, Or Kids Grow. So I want to thank the Elaine P. and Richard U. Wilson Foundation, who continue their long-time lead sponsorship of our summer programming, and the Wegman Family Charitable Foundation, who continue their long-time support of the RPO at a truly extraordinary level. Thanks to the support of all of you here tonight, and thousands of other donors across our community, nearly 180,000 people experienced the RPO live in concert last season, including 14,000 young people who were introduced to the thrill of live symphonic music at our education concerts. Thanks to you, the RPO found countless new ways to fulfill our core purpose, to inspire and educate and engage our community through the art of music. So looking ahead, I will say that we remain committed to the strategies I've been discussing here: artistic growth and audience growth through innovative programming and ever deeper community connections. Yesterday's announcement of our programming for the 2014 Spring for Music Festival at Carnegie Hall is perhaps the most prominent example of this organization moving forward artistically, in doing so in close partnership with the Eastman School of Music. As you may have heard, on May 7, 2014, we will be presenting Howard Hanson's rarely performed 1934 opera, Marymount, in a concert presentation in collaboration with the Voice and Opera Department at Eastman. As the RPO takes this important national stage in our first Carnegie Hall performance since 1985, this will be an especially proud moment for the RPO and our musicians, for Eastman and the University of Rochester, and for Rochester itself. With our 2013-14 season announcement coming up in mid-February, and other special projects and new collaborations on the drawing board, I can assure you that our artistic staff, our artistic VP, Richard Decker, conductors Jeff Tyzik and Michael Butterman, the musicians' artistic advisory committee, all of us are working very closely together to ensure that during this time of artistic transition, we continue to build on the RPO's long and proud tradition of world-class music making and outstanding service to our community. Once again, we're deeply grateful for your steadfast support of your Rochester Philharmonic. We're going green and saving money on printing costs this year, but please remember that you can read the complete 2011-12 annual report and the complete audited financial statements. They're already online by visiting our website at rpo.org. Thank you.
It's 6:30 in the evening. We were late in getting this meeting started, so I'd like to limit this to half an hour at the most. If you run out of questions before that, that's perfectly fine. We'll get done sooner. And if anybody would like to make a statement at this point, we would be happy to have you come up to the microphone that's over there. And but we would ask that, courtesy of all the other people in the room, that you limit your statement to no more than 2 minutes.
Madam Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
My husband and I have been long-term supporters and subscribers to the RPO donors. I guess I better read this because I don't want to get too nervous. To the members of the RPO board and to Charles Owens, all of whom should resign, we have been long-term subscribers and donors to the RPO and enjoyed many years of beautiful concerts. We can no longer, in good conscience, continue to donate nor subscribe. I have turned in our tickets for tomorrow night's concert, which a real Riverite was scheduled to conduct. We have also returned our tickets for the May 9th and May 30th, 2013 concerts, which Maestro Riverite was originally scheduled to conduct. I have read Ingrid Bach's letter to the city newspaper. I admire her courage, along with that of a few other musicians who have spoken out in favor of Maestro Riverite. I am confident there are many more who support him but are afraid of losing their jobs. Both my husband and I were volunteers at every one of the symphony show houses, and we enjoyed every minute of it. For the past 2 years, I have been one of the rear guard sentinels who sit backstage during orchestra rehearsals to guard the musicians' belongings. I have resigned from this duty and have asked that my name be removed from the volunteer list. This is our last donation to the RPO, and please note there are
historically, before the recession, the orchestra had operated successfully at a $10 million level. But I think we have all realized that since the recession, there is a new normal that is not what it was like before the recession. So, no, we did not do a feasibility study, but we did have expectations that we could increase our revenues and make our budget balance. Okay, these two are sort of related, so I'll try to address them at the same time. What's the plan for a new music director? And so much of what Charles reported about was the excitement of the past season is because of the real Rembrandt's leadership. Skill and creativity, what other conductor will have those characteristics? The plan for a new music director is to seek one. We have organized a search committee that will be getting underway actually the Friday of this week. We do believe that there are any number of candidates out there that can do some energetic and exciting programming for us. We don't have a specific person in mind yet. We'll do a thorough search. But we have had many calls from agents who have conductors who are very, very interested in becoming a music director at the RPO, just because of the outstanding caliber of the orchestra that we have here. So we are not particularly worried about eventually finding somebody who will fit with us, who will have that energy, that passion, that creative programming, as well as a collaborative spirit to bring it all together in a team. What's my comment on the lawsuit filed today at the Monroe County Clerk's Office about illegal ways to run not-for-profit operations? There was no lawsuit filed today. It was a request for a temporary restraining order to not have this meeting. We are having this meeting, so the temporary restraining order was not approved. We have not run this organization illegally. That's all I can say. Why were the members' qualifications set to include only contributions from January 1 to December 21st, 2012, thus disenfranchising a large group of donors who typically give the last week in December? Why weren't the dates set from December 22nd to 2011 to December 21st, 2012? When we set our record date, typically the record date has been set December 5th. We set it for at the ending December 21. There are things, if you read our bylaws, technically people's membership expires at the end of our fiscal year, which is August 31st. So if you were very liberal about the interpretation of our record date, you would have set the date from September 1st to sometime within 10 to 50 days of the date of the meeting. But it always had to be at least 10 days, and we had to get a mailing out. So we didn't think it was appropriate to set a record date for voters that was just September to December 21st. And so as a board, we Unfortunately, I don't. Rumors, let's see. Rumors abound as to why the maestro was terminated, but you have offered no clarification. You hired a mediator, but quickly terminated a real, but not Charlie Owens. Why? Public opinion has been strong pro Real and his musicianship. Why was he fired? I have an answer that's prepared for that. Why did the board take this action? The music director's agreement requires that we as a board assess his performance annually. It includes feedback from musicians, board, the CEO, and the chair. The board decided to cut short Mr. Romeright's tenure because he did not meet the criteria to which he committed back in June for performance improvement. These criteria included improvement in the following areas: to build a collaborative working relationship with the CEO and others in the organization to support the overall objectives of the RPO, to demonstrate respect for all board, honorary board members, staff, and musicians, to agree and respect to work within the governance structures of the RPO, the board committees, the administrative organizations, musicians, contract, and union processes. In addition, a number of valuable staff members left the RPO, saying that Real made it impossible for them to work with him. In summary, without getting into a lot of detail, that's why we fired him. He did not meet the criteria to which he ascribed and committed back in June. We did not fire him abruptly. As I said in my remarks, we've been working on this for quite some time. We actually started working on it before this fiscal year. I left out anything that preceded this fiscal year. We have been working with him on issues that have gone back over 18 months. We were at risk of losing more staff members, and while they're staff members, if we don't have people who can book concerts, sell tickets, raise money, organize and turn on the lights and run things, there are no concerts to put on, there are no musicians that we can pay, and we fold. Why has development and marketing staff just now become fully staffed? Because it's been fully staffed since October. Why was it just now fully staffed? Well, because we finally replaced all the people that left. We lost 4 key personnel. Our marketing vice president, who was replaced last January. Is that right, Mark? Wherever you were?
A year ago today.
Oh my! Happy anniversary, Mark. So Mark's been with us for a year. We also lost our publicist, and the publicist was temporarily replaced and switched jobs, but we do have a publicist with us now as of, I think, Mark, help me on that. Are you still there?
Yeah, oh yeah, since the fall.
Since the fall. Okay, so marketing has been operating since the fall, fully staffed. We lost our director of development last spring, and we also lost the manager of our annual campaign last spring. Our annual campaign manager has been replaced and was replaced in the fall. We did a search to replace our director of development, and we actually upgraded the position to a vice president of development. In addition, we've hired a major gifts officer to really give that organization some power. We did a search. It took us some time to find the right candidate. The first few candidates we interviewed as part of our search, we could not agree that we had found a match, so we kept looking. We were fortunate enough to attract Mr. Kyle Polite, who was around here somewhere. I don't know where. Oh, Kyle's up in the balcony. And Kyle, you started October 15th. So actually, we've been fully staffed now for about 3 months. And as everybody knows, when you start a new job, there's always a learning curve. But these things take time when you lose people. It takes some time. Anybody who runs a business, you know, you can't just magic wand bring in a replacement for them that is up to speed. How can you report a balanced budget when you are showing a $750,000 annual deficit, which is a carryover from last year. We did have a deficit from several years ago, right as the recession hit. But the way the accounting works, and I'll have to defer to my friend Craig Stevens sitting there if I trip myself up, but these are annual income statements. Just like anybody's profit and loss statement for earnings, we did balance our budget the 2 years after that, which means what we brought in from an unrestricted basis to what we spent from an unrestricted basis was roughly the same. But whoever wrote this question is right from a cash perspective. The fact that we had that miss of several years ago, it does constrain our cash. And we are working to get ourselves out of that. It was a couple of years ago after we had this deficit, we actually took out a term loan. M&T Bank was kind enough to borrow some money. It's secured by endowment funds, so it's a pretty low risk for them. We have been paying this term loan back for the last 2 years. I think it was an $800,000 term loan, and the balance is down to, is it $600,000 now? So we are gradually paying back that deficit in the form of let's call it long-term financing. According to the letter to eligible voters, members can vote for directors in person at the annual meeting. Why were we not asked for our vote? If you read our bylaws, you can vote in person by bringing your ballot to the meeting. Anybody who had a ballot and gave it to us, we counted it. It is not a voice vote. Our bylaws stipulate that the election for directors is done by written ballot. So hopefully whoever had this, that's why we didn't ask for a vote. We have been counting them in. Craig Stevens and the election inspectors have been counting them as they had come in either through the mail or they were brought here. They have all the ballots in the back room. Will you be answering all the questions posed this evening or just chosen questions? So far, I've answered everyone that I've been given. And those are all the questions we have, so we're going to start. No?
I had a second question on that.
Oh, can you write it down or come up to the microphone?
You have.
I'm sorry? I can't hear you up here. If you can come up to the microphone if you have a question, it's a crowded room and it's tough to hear.
I had a follow-up question regarding the staffing of development and marketing, which got to not only what happened in the immediate past, but what was turnover like in prior years, about the past 3 years?
We've had some turnover in the staff. Some of it is of our own making. When we had that large deficit several years ago, one of the things the RPO did to balance its budget was to tighten its belt from a cost perspective, in cost cutting, and we laid off any number of people during that fiscal year. I forget which one it was. Ron, can you help me? After we had the $750,000 deficit, it was 08, 09. So we drove a lot of turnover ourselves at that point in time. We have had people that we have hired in certain cases where we've had openings that have left us for other jobs. We had a marketing analyst, for instance, who was an Eastman grad, and he wanted to go on and do some things. He's now working for the Eastman School, but he wanted to go part-time so he could pursue more in music as well. We've had some people that have retired. We've had several people who have left us for better jobs. The 4 people that I enumerated that we just restaffed left, frankly, because at least as they said in their exit interviews, they did not think that Maestro Wainwright appreciated their leadership, and he was saying unkind and damaging things about their careers, and they felt that Rochester was a small town and they needed to preserve they were young, up-and-coming individuals, so they had some measure of self-preservation to do their jobs. But we have been successful in restaffing with, I think, some really high-caliber people, and I'm really excited about the team we have in place now under Charlie. Any other questions? Could you come down to the microphone? I'm sorry, either that or write it down. I've been.
It was a statement that was given to me that wasn't a question.
Oh, all right. Hold on here. There were two I grouped together. There were two I grouped together, which was what's the plan for a music director, and so much of what Charlie reported about was the excitement of the past season because of a real summer leadership.
There was one.
Like I said, I have answered every question I've been given. I don't know what happened once. Otherwise,
there was one person, I don't know who it was, who handed in something that wasn't a question. It was a comment about firing people.
Okay, can you speak up a little bit, or at least stand up so we can hear you? Go to the microphone. I'm sorry, but it's really hard for people to hear. No. Oh, here it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, never mind. All of them were on little pieces of paper except yours. Okay, why has development and marketing, just been now fully staffed. Okay, so I answered the first one. I'm sorry, there was a second one. What has been the historical staffing level for development and marketing over the past 3 years? And has the staffing level been specified in any RPO contracts? For development and marketing, no, there's no contract per se for the staff. That's not it? Okay. I'm sorry. This is the only one I have. It's on a small piece of paper. Maybe I lost it. Okay, I'll read this. Whether or not Meister Rowering is the right direction for the RPO, the handling of the situation has been a public relations disaster. In light of their poor handling of this, should the CEO, Charlie, and me, should we not resign? They have hurt the orchestra. When this happens, they should go. From a public relations perspective, most of what's been put out in the newspaper has not been put out by the RPO proper. It has been put out by people other than authorized RPO individuals. There have been leaks to the press of confidential information. Back in September, we had some board members. Stuart Lowe told me point blank, 3 of your board members have told me this. And your board members gave me this confidential report. Your board members did this. You can imagine what our board meetings were like when I found out that happened. I don't know who did it. I'll never know who did it. But since we've terminated Mr. Remeray, we have put out some statements that talked about why we did what we did, the process we went through. But because this is a personnel matter, we are not really wanting to put into the public domain all of the dirty stuff that happened inside the RPO. And I am trying to respect the man's privacy. I don't mean to permanently damage his career. Unfortunately, people's emotions have gotten out of control. People post on Facebook. Most of these people they're not posting on behalf of the RPO itself. We have tried to be quality in our communications. We have tried to take the high ground. Unfortunately, a lot of what we put out in the press in terms of positive news hasn't been printed. And frankly, that's been very frustrating for me and for the rest of my board members. So no, I don't see any reason from a public relations perspective that we should resign because we made a decision. The board made the decision and did. The board membership, which is about 30 people, approximately 80% of the board members voted to terminate his contract early. And you can see some of them here today if you'd like to talk to them privately offline about why they did or what made them make up their minds to do this. We certainly weigh his impact on the community and the music and the programming. In our deliberations, we've talked about it for a long, long time. It was a very difficult decision for us to make. We worked to try to improve it for at least 18 months, and it didn't get any better. And so finally we had to make a difficult decision. We were hoping not to. We have been working a long, long time to try to make this a win-win scenario, because we all felt that with Charlie, from an administrative perspective and from artistic perspective, if we could get this relationship between them and not just them, but with board members, with musicians and everybody, if we could get this relationship to work, we knew we had a win-win combination. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And I think what's going on here right now, frankly, is analogous to a divorce. And sometimes divorces get messy. That's the only thing I can say. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. It's very disruptive. I apologize for all the disruption. We are ready to try to move on as productively as we can and get back to playing music. Because it really is not about any one individual. It's about the institution. It's about what we offer to our children. It's about the pops. It's about the fills. It's about a lot of different aspects of what the RPO does. And we have lots of musicians that are sitting here with us, and I think there's a whole bunch of but this is about the musicians, it's about sustaining the organization, it's about keeping the RPO and the great things that this organization does going for another 90 years.
Madam Chair, you just made a statement that I find disturbing.
Okay.
That if anybody wishes to talk to any of the board members about their decision and about this board situation, that is not the way to go about this matter. When a board votes, every board member is bound by that vote. And the only person who speaks on behalf of the board is the board chair. So to actually invite people to speak individually is to continue exactly the kind of business that's been going on. So I would please urge everyone, if they have any objections, as I've heard today, I'm going to hand in my ticket, I'm not going to support the RPO. That's a ridiculous way to behave. Because this is a fine orchestra and it deserves our support. We need to be in the audience. However, if you have any objection about the board's behavior, the handling of any situation, the thing to do is to write to the chair of the board and have your voice heard that way, and not to be talking out and
you are right. You are right. Thank you for that correction. One more person, and then we're going to leave because it is about 7 o'clock. Pardon me? One more person after Ms. Rimble. Okay, thank you. Yes.
I'm Sandy Frankel, and I'd like to read my statement. My husband and I have attended RPO concerts and have been supporters for more than 30 years. And I love the RPO. Pardon my voice. I hope I'm not getting the bugs that's going around these days. But I do want to say that the RPO is not only important to us, but also to the culture and quality of life of the greater Rochester area. And I want to see the RPO continue from a position of strength. We're fortunate to have such outstanding musicians who, under the direction of Mr. Remright, never sounded better. Personally, I was thrilled to see new ideas, new programming that included women composers and concerts that have included young people in the arts. I'm coming at this RPO. I've not been privy to the internal issues that have moved onto the front page. The information I have is from news reports and public information meetings, which presented both sides of the issue. Today, the RPO faces budget problems. When I first became supervisor of Brighton, we discovered significant inherited structural budget problems, which we turned around, built consensus, and were able to establish a strong financial foundation that enabled us to move the community goals, shared community goals forward. And I believe that my experience could benefit the RPO and wanted to be of help in this regard. Our precious orchestra and the musicians who have dedicated themselves to giving us a world-class musical organization deserve strong community support. The RPO is part of what makes Rochester a great place to live, and I intend to continue to support the RPO going forward. I hope you all will too.
Thank you. In terms of those people who ran on the alternate slate, thank you. You know, the RPO has board openings throughout the year. And the way the process works is the governance committee will select or go out and recruit board members. We always keep an active list of potential board members. Board members are appointed throughout the year to fill existing vacancies. And then once a year, at this membership meeting, their appointments are ratified. So if any of you who ran on the alternate slate are interested in joining the RPO board, we would certainly welcome your involvement. Bill Eggers is the chair of our governance committee. Contact Bill, or if you want, contact Charlie and or someone at the RPO, and we'll make sure that we get your information to him and the governance committee, and we can certainly sit down and explore people's interest in joining the board. There are time commitments, there are financial commitments, and we always like to make sure that people understand what they're getting themselves into before they sign up. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, contact us, and we'd be happy to entertain that. Okay, one more, and then we're going. My tummy is rumbling.
My name is Joe Mancini. I have attended RPO classical and pop concerts for over 60 years. Well, what they all do. I've also had a membership for at least 50 of those 60 years. I held off making my annual contribution because I wanted more information on Reynolds dismissal. I've got that information today. And this has inspired me to increase my contribution to $2,500. Thank you for making a necessary and difficult decision, but a correct one. And thank you so much for your dedication to the welfare of our most precious orchestra.
Okay, with that last question, I will adjourn the non-business portion of the meeting. Thank you all for coming.